Antonio, you've spoke about the road ahead that Tottenham are on, but not to be scared. So can you explain the road that you see?
Hard work. It means sacrifice and to know that during this path there are moments where you have to suffer, but at the same time your confidence has to continue to stay very, very high. And during this path you have to find the right person, no? The right people that want to come with you. Sometimes you have to know that you have to suffer, to show resilience and the difficulty. And don't give up, don't lose your confidence, don't lose your way, no? Your vision about the win. And I think in this path you built also the winning mentality.
How do you coach that winning mentality to your players?
I was lucky. I was lucky in my career because I arrived in Juventus when I was only 21 years old, and I played for this team for 13 years. And for sure in this period I learned a lot, because when you arrive in a team that there is only one aspiration, to win and stop, because the defeat or the second place, you don't celebrate the second place. The second place is a defeat. You start to understand that when you play the game, every game there are two opportunities: or you live or you die. And I prefer to kill in a sportive way, to kill and you must kill your opponent if you want to live, no? I know very well that after a defeat, in my mind, in my heart, no, in my body, it seems like I die for one day, no? And now I improved, because when I was player and at the start when I started my career coach, for 2 days at least I needed to recover about a defeat.
So you face a team at the weekend with Manchester City that are full of confidence, and you spoke about your team maybe sometimes lacking it.
Yeah.
So then how do you help them to get that going into the game?
You have to be stable, to trust in your work, and the player has to feel this, that when you speak with a player, and the player has to be convinced about what you are telling. And for this reason, in every moment that I speak with my players, I like to tell the truth. We want to fight, we want to play football, we want to bring high intensity, we want to continue to improve.
Antonio, grazie mille.
Grazie a te. Thank you very much.
Not the point where I'm going to pick up by trying to speak any Italian. Righty, what did you make of that interview? Because I felt like he was quite honest about where Spurs are currently at.
Yeah, but it's very confusing. It's to where Spurs are where they're at the moment, and him, almost like he's just realising it. Especially when he turned them down in the summer. Probably they were saying about him not being able to get his coaching staffs, not coming up to what he wanted. And so it's really strange that they got Nuno, then obviously Nuno's gone, and then he's come back and he's still taken the job where I was thinking, I think a lot of people are thinking, I don't know, Miguel could put me right if I'm wrong, that he's obviously going to get exactly what he wants. And what I'm hearing from the interviews and everything I'm reading from Antonio Conte at the moment, it's not what he wanted. I saw something where he mentioned about top 4. You know what I mean? I'd go for if you're coming to Spurs, your first mission for me is to get them in the top 4. So for him to feel that he didn't realise that that's what he was going for, he wanted more, it's quite confusing. The whole thing's confusing for me.
Right, he says he's confused, Miguel. He brought you in there because I think he was hoping you were going to shed a bit more light on what you're hearing about Antonio Conte there, because he said there, didn't he? I think he said in that interview that second place is not something to be celebrated. He is a serial winner, isn't he? Yeah,
I think he's absolutely right. It's hard not to be confused given the status of Conte as a manager, and I suppose the financial status of Spurs as a club, and also in terms of winning trophies, where, well, I mean, when you stand back a bit, and just the way Wrighty's framed it there, given that they couldn't come to an agreement in the summer, and when you consider the situations of both when he eventually went there in November, it's hard not to feel there was, maybe desperation is the wrong word, but just it was a little bit of a marriage of convenience more than anything else, but only convenience for where they were. Spurs had just sacked a manager that was unpopular. The football was unpopular. Levy himself was under increasing pressure, so he needed to deliver a name. Conte was that name. Conte, I don't think the timing is coincidental in that a few weeks beforehand, everyone thought United might go for him, but he basically knew Manchester United wouldn't. They just never thought he was the right fit for the club. And so there's no other word for it really. He resorted to Spurs, and maybe there was a sense of everyone thinking, okay, this might work, but there were still so many reservations. And as Wright says there, I mean, Conte has very exacting standards. Where I think actually there is merit to what he's saying as well, where it's not just expectation management for him or to make his performance in Spurs look better. Given the state of the top four, given the state of the race for the top four, he thought there was a real opportunity. And if Spurs properly invest in this January, they could reap much bigger rewards by qualifying for the Champions League. Because Manchester United, they're still not a full team under Rangnick. West Ham are obviously kind of really overachieving to even be there. And Arsenal are very promising, but still, because they're young, quite fragile. So if Conte maybe had a bit more,
better players,
a bit more substance, shall we say?
I think for me, like, it's an interesting one because it's almost like fitting, round pegs in square holes. Because Antonio Conte, Nuno, I think people got on his case quite a lot, and for me, Tottenham hasn't really changed that much since Antonio Conte's come in. We can talk about him being a serial winner, but he's not winning at the moment. And that is a combination of the players as well. I think the players are not good enough. And I'm a bit confused as to why he even took this job on if he didn't realise the requirements of what they had. Maybe he was promised that he was going to be able to spend money in a January transfer window. That didn't really happen. But the decision making at the club, to me, under Daniel Levy, hasn't been good enough. They're selling players, big players over the years, and not just recently. You can go all the way back to Gareth Bale and really bad, poor judgment signings and spent a lot of money. But Antonio Conte, people are saying, on the sideline, he doesn't look as animated anymore. Having a manager like that will only take you so far. If you've not got the quality on the pitch, being a manager, being animated, how much more can he do? And when a new manager comes in, what it's like, Wrighty. You do play well, you perform to your highest level because you want to be in the team, but eventually everyone will resort back to type, and the players are not good enough.
What's changed then? Because when they went 8 unbeaten when he first came in, everyone was saying this is the Conte effect, this is what he's been brought in to do. So it's 3 league defeats in a row for the first time for Conte in 12 years as a manager, but what's changed in those 3 games?
To finish off with what I was just saying about that, I think that it's the knock-on effect where a manager comes in, everybody wants to play well, and then eventually that runs out. You can't have an animated coach on the sideline getting the best out of players like that if they're just not good enough. I'm not saying all of them, but apart from Son and Harry Kane, realistically, the players are not good enough and not at the races.
Bar the Liverpool game as well, I think that run was really forgiving. Some of it was a Conte effect, obviously, but it was still kind of a favourable opening set of fixtures, and now we've had the flip side of it.
Yeah.
He said in that interview as well, you can't buy a winning mentality. Does that go back to what you're saying, Leanne, about the fact that maybe he needs to do more than just work with the players on the pitch, that he's trying to shape a culture at Spurs? He signed an 18-month deal as well.
Definitely. I mean, Conte's been at Juventus and I was at Juventus, and he just left when I got there, and a lot of the players said his demands were on a different level. These players that have been used to, Harry Kane being on the golf course and stuff like that's gone out the window because the training is so, like, the misconception in Italy is that they're very laid back. Yes, Serie A looks quite laid back, but the training methods are on a different level. And if the players can't handle that, incorporation of the ability of the players have, then for me, it's only going to go one way, and it's not surprising to me. But he's exasperated. He's on the sideline. He's trying, but if the players just simply can't implement what he's trying to do, they're trying their best, but maybe their best just isn't good enough.
I think that for him to be signing an 18-month contract, coming, and he's talking about players coming through the academy or having to bring players on. Players have gone out, on not the same amount have come in. I can't understand, again, for 18 months, why he would say yes to this job when he hasn't then got the assurances that I'm only here for 18 months, so I haven't got the time to actually bring players through the academy for them to then get themselves to a level where they're going to help me to push to, like he's saying, second isn't something to celebrate. Tottenham need fourth, and they've got what? He's got to get academy players to try and do that for him. The whole situation seems like we're not hearing everything what we need to hear, because, like I say, when he came back to Tottenham once Nuno's gone, you'd have thought, well, his bargaining position is brilliant now.
Yeah.
Daniel Levy cannot do the same thing what he done with Pochettino, not back him at this stage. You can't get an elite manager like they had with Pochettino. Like I say, the vanity project, what he always wanted to have with Mourinho, then getting it totally wrong with Nuno. Then you end up with Antonio Conte and you're still not backing him in the way he wants to be backed. I'm looking at his demeanour in the interviews there, Kels, and there's a resignation of, I might make a mistake here. I get that feeling, and he's only got 18 months. I've said on this show, I'm not sure he's going to stay longer than the end of this season. If he does, I'll be very surprised because I can't see what the incentive will be.
And the thing about that as well is, I mean, this isn't just about context. It's not just about Conte. It's about the wider context of the club, because tied up to both Conte's future and Tottenham's future is Harry Kane's future. And I mean, we know Kane wanted to leave last summer. Everyone knows it. And he was irritated with the way the season started, but he was someone that was really captivated once Conte came in. He felt like this was a way basically to secure Kane's future as well. And if he gets aggravated by what's happening, say if, as Wright suspects, Conte leaves in the summer, what's going to happen with Kane then? And then suddenly they've got even bigger problems. It does feel like, rather than this appointment being a moment where Spurs could again have pushed on, as they could have done under Pochettino in 2018, it feels like they're just kind of hanging on to a certain status.
It seems to me like, you know, Daniel Levy's at some stage, he's going to come at his door. It's like, if I'm Harry Kane, Son, all the players that want Tottenham, that want to be where they were. You know, Poch took them there. They want to be back there. How they must be feeling, knowing that they've had certain managers that could take them there, and it's just not happening in respect of the players that they're bringing in to try and help them get there.
Let's get a bit of perspective on this in terms of this season, though, because they are still very much, Leanne, in the race for the top four. I've joked on a few programmes and said it feels like this season no one wants to get that fourth spot, because when you look at all of the teams going for it, they've all got maybe issues, or there's all reasons why they might get it or might not get it. Spurs are very much still in there this season. So we talk about Champions League football being the minimum. It does look like Spurs could get it.
Yeah, definitely, but I think it's almost like a false sense of reality, because whoever comes in fourth is going to be the best of a bad bunch. Because as you mentioned, you know, there's inconsistencies in their performances. You've got Manchester United, and obviously Conte was linked to go to Manchester United, and I actually think, and we'll talk about Man United later in the show and whatever, but I think that they're underachieving at Tottenham even more based upon that, if you know what I mean, because Man United have the quality. I don't think Tottenham do. But I definitely think mathematically they can make the top four, but do I think Tottenham will make the top four? No. So it's almost like when Antonio Conte got this job, what were the expectations and requirements? And as Wright said, he's come in, he's not been able to bring players in. So that's probably why he looks dejected in his interviews and almost like, you know, he's given up to a certain degree, and there's still a long way to go. And it is possible, they could still make the top four, but with the players they have, I just can't see it.
What do you think of it in terms of the race for the top four? Because Leanne said there that she talked about Manchester United and the other teams in the race, but Spurs have got the games in hand as well. So can you see them bouncing back from those three defeats? I
would have had Spurs as favourites 3 weeks ago, just because of those games in hand, because of that previous form, and because of Conte, because of his force of personality, and also because I would have thought, and I think that we were all under this presumption that they were going to sign in January. They're going to make a statement and just lift the level of the team. That didn't happen. As Conte intimates, it's possible, well, in terms of numbers, they've made the squad weaker. Kulusevski and Betancourt, they're good signings, but it doesn't feel like they're transformative signings. He didn't get the right wing back he wants. It does feel like they've squandered an opportunity, and now it really does feel it's almost going to, whoever gets top four, as Leanne indicates there, it could be by default, just who's lap. It feels like it could be Arsenal right now.
Yeah, hopefully.
No.
But the thing is, you look at someone like Harry Kane, and you know, looking at Conte's interviews, I'd love to. I can't wait to see what happens at the end of the season with him, because the least he would have probably wanted would to at least be in Champions League positions. To not only maybe the manager might not be there, but not to make it, because I, like everybody else, thought that the 18-month contract says that they're going to probably back him as quick as they can, so as he could do what he needs to do, so as then if it is successful, they can sign him again because he could see the progress. But you look at it, you think to yourself, it doesn't look like, for me at the moment, it doesn't look rosy for Spurs and the fans. I feel for the fans a bit, because they must be even more confused than anyone else, because not only could they lose their manager, they might not get top four, then Harry Kane, it's going to be interesting to see what Harry Kane does at the end of this. So there's a lot going on with a team that I believed with that manager would probably had a really good case in getting in top 4 place, simply because of the calibre of forwards they've got.
Just on that, I mean, both of you guys, have you been in situations where you feel like you're in a club where you feel the club isn't maximising its potential and you're getting frustrated with where you can see the kind of Conte situation here?
I'll tell you what happened. It was Palace when we came into the first division and we finished 3rd. Leeds finished 4th. And we all had a feeling that if we had a couple more signings, because Leeds, I think they signed Tony DeRigo and Rod Wallace, and then they won the league.
Yeah.
They won the league, and I felt that we didn't need much more. We finished 3rd, that we needed that. So it was after that's when I started to feel, well, if we're not going to take advantage of that, then I want to win those things. So that's the only time in my career where I felt it, because everywhere else when I went to Arsenal, everything was about going to the next step and striving to get there. But that was the only time I actually felt something like that.
I think for me, when I was at Arsenal for 12 years, one thing I noticed when I went to Chelsea for one season was the mentality. And it was almost like at Arsenal, we learnt the Arsenal way. You know, even though Arsene Wenger was the manager, we did everything the men did. So it was almost easier when you went into the first team. And then when I got to Chelsea, I felt like the mentality wasn't the same. So it was a little bit different. And you touched on something earlier, Miguel, that I wanted to pick up on. You know, when you talk about a manager on the sideline, that can only take you so far. The players have to, you know, find something within themselves, because it's all very well Antonio Conte running up and down the sidelines, you know, being animated, but the players, again, are just not good enough. And he's probably annoyed about that as well. Because the players he's brought in, Kulusevski and Bentancur, he's resorted back to type. They're Juventus players. And these are 2 players that are not really, you know, always in the lineup for Juventus. And he's obviously brought them in because they're pretty cheap, and players that he thinks he can get the best out of, maybe for him. Because he's probably looking around thinking, well, I've got Harry Kane, I've got Son, who's been injured, but Harry Kane really doesn't really want to be there, does he, at times this season? So it'll be interesting to see what they do at the end of the season. But I feel sorry for Spurs fans, I really do, because, you know, it wasn't long ago they were in the Champions League final, and the fall from grace has been quite drastic in a short space of time.
Well, they of course can't sign any more players. This is the squad that they've got to try and get into the top 4 with. As we've discussed then, they are still very much in this race for the top 4, Wrighty. What formation suits Spurs best? Because there's been so much said, hasn't there, about Antonio Conte's favoured 3-4-3. Is that going to get the best out of this squad?
Well, I think that for me, you have to have Son has to start, Harry Kane has to start, Son has to start, and I would definitely have Moura starting. So 3-4-3 with the wing backs, what he wants pushed on, is probably the best way for them to do it. But like Leanne says, are they good enough to do it? I watched them against Wolves, and I know we're going to speak about Wolves later, and Wolves put them under pressure, and it was mistakes. They made mistakes, pressure they were put under, in respect to them losing that game. But I think that whatever they're doing, Kels, it has to lead to getting the ball in and around Harry Kane and Son and Moura. Moura with his work rate, pressing higher, getting the ball, winning the ball in that area of the field, because Harry Kane will take the chances, and Son as well, who needs to kick on himself in respect of his form. You know, they need to just get the ball in and around where their strength is.
Moura, I think, is a bit of a scapegoat as well, because at times I think he gets benched and substituted when he actually does a really good job.
Great job.
He's got a great quality about him, but I think he's one of those players that if there's something that someone needs to be left out, they'll leave him out, and I don't think that's the answer.
Do you see balance in that Spurs team when those 3 start? Is that their best front 3?
Well, it gives them potency. I mean, you can't get away from that. The team is lopsided, basically. Now, to be fair, I think Doherty has had, and it's interesting, he plays against, or given we're talking about Wolves, and given their resurgence, Doherty, he hasn't had his Wolves form at Spurs. Maybe that's because he played so much at Wolves. I mean, you would think he's the sort of player that actually could be transformed under Conte, and maybe he has to now, because he didn't get the right wing back he wants. He didn't get Adama Traore. But for the moment, it does just feel that Conte has a few systems, primarily the 3-4-3, that can work in some areas, certain players, but the team just isn't fully firing in the manner he wants.
And creativity, Kels. You look at their team. I don't know who's the creativity from a midfield point of view from them. I think everything has to come from them, from their wing backs. You know, because like they don't do anything. They haven't got anything that come from, like, and Ndombele was meant to be the ones. Lo Celso, they're both gone now on loan. So you look at what they've got left in Winks and in Skip, you know, and Højbjerg. There's not enough creativity going through that team to create chances for those guys.
And just on that as well, I remember, like, from covering Conte's Chelsea a lot, and also from watching his events a little bit. In midfield, he generally likes if he doesn't have creators, which doesn't, he generally prefers kind of really hard runners to complement them kind of overwhelming teams, which he doesn't have now. But then, as you say, at a certain point in game, especially with Chelsea, he would take off usually Matic or someone like that and bring on Cesc, and then they kind of unpick opposition side. And there's nothing like that. So, but Spurs right now, he doesn't have runners in midfield, and he doesn't have that creator.
Yeah. And Lucas Moura usually can play in the 10 as well. Yeah. You know, he's not historically a winger. So it's almost like they're playing him there because he's going to be the best of the three, you know, in that three, sorry. But based upon, you know, they need to get some players that can fit his style. I don't think they have them right now. And you mentioned Traoré, they didn't get him. He obviously didn't want to play that type of position, but they desperately need the players that can play his style, because otherwise they've just got players there now that can't do what he's asking of them, and that's probably why he's frustrated.
Well, it doesn't get any easier this weekend, does it, with them travelling to Manchester City? How do you see this one going? Because I don't really know. How does he approach it is probably the best way to put this question.
I mean, I assume this is not going to be a widespread view. I just have a feeling, actually, given all this, given the build-up, given City's run, given Spurs' run, but given Conte's defiance, I half fancy Spurs to just put in their performance.
Nah. I can't see that at all.
That's why I hesitated when asking that question, because I was going to say it doesn't get any easier. But then as I was saying it, I was thinking they're the kind of games that Conte probably relishes, aren't they?
You know something, now you say it has made me feel, I hear what you're saying there, Miguel. We know that City will continue to go at them, whatever they do. If they put the 5 at the back, 4 in front, they'll still try and go at them. But at the same time, with a Moura, with a Son, with a Kane, if you can be solid against City, we've seen that City can be broken open on the counter-attack, and those guys could take the opportunity. And it is the kind of game that when you do need to focus your mind on something to get yourselves, it's the perfect game. Because I think that going into it, a lot of people won't fancy Tottenham with City in the formula, and especially what they've done the other night. And it's the kind of game where Conte will have them probably really ready for this game. So I wouldn't say it's a foregone conclusion, but I'd still have City as the favourites in it.
I'm completely disagreeing with the guys because I can't see it. You know, I could be wrong and I could eat my own words, but I think City are on a completely different level, as much as it pains me to say it, and I don't think Tottenham will be able to handle, you know, Foden, Sterling, Grealish, whoever's playing. These players are on a high level, and the consistency of them, regardless of what they did in the Champions League, they're on a different level, and I don't think Tottenham can handle it. And I know there's this big fascination of Conte and he's going to get the best out of them, but the quality is not there, and I can't see it happening.
The one thing, just touching on something Wright he said there about focus as well, it's quite, with City, even though it's obviously it's the hardest game you can play in Europe right now, given their level, and look at how they destroyed Sporting on Tuesday, but even because they're that hard to play against, in terms of preparation, they give you kind of, they make it easy in terms of your decisions, because Conte, he knows this is how we have to set up. So maybe in terms of he can just, given how Spurs have shifted between different formations under him, and there's questions about who he'll pick, this actually makes it easier, and maybe it can bring that extra focus from a Conte team, and he can be much clearer about what they have to do. But I suppose, as Leanne says, it's still, I mean,
it's a tough ask.
Knowing what you have to do is one thing, doing it is another.
It's a tough ask.
Do you think it also helps, though, that potentially the pressure will be off, because there'll be a lot of people like Leanne saying that Manchester City are on a superior level to everyone in the Premier League right now, whereas in some of Spurs' recent games, they've been against Southampton, Wolves, where the fans would have almost expected 3 points.
And like the Wolves game, watching the Wolves game, they had to try and impress themselves upon Wolves, which it was a different Wolves. Wolves are pressing higher. They didn't used to do that under Nuno. They're doing it under Bruno Lage. And so them being away to City, they can sit in and try and cause City the problems that people have to try and cause City, deny them space in those areas where they want to make those little 1-2 runs. And so what could happen, and the only thing that can happen for them is they're able to be resolute, and then you've got a half chance taker like Harry Kane who can score the goal. So that is a possibility, but then again, you know, the way they're playing, the way City are playing, you have to say they'll go into that fully focused, fully confident. And if Spurs do not get it right defensively, they'll be beaten quite easily.
Antonio Conte, Tottenham head coach, says club had difficult January transfer window. Antonio Conte, what happened in January wasn't straightforward. 4 players left the club, and they were important ones. 2 came in, so in numerical terms, instead of strengthening, on paper the squad was weakened. Antonio Conte says it was a difficult January transfer window for Tottenham, but understands the club's priority is to find and develop young players. After missing out on deals for Adama Traoré and Luis Diaz, Spurs only brought in Juventus pair Dejan Kulusevski and Rodrigo Bentancur on deadline day. On the same day, Conte saw the club's two most expensive players, Tanguy Ndombele and Giovanni Lo Celso, leave on loan, with Dele Alli joining Everton for £40 million and Bryan Gil going to Valencia less than 6 months after his £25 million arrival from Sevilla. However, the Spurs head coach says he understands the club's vision is to develop young players rather than by proven experience. In an interview with Sky Italy, Conte said, "When you take on a job at a club that hasn't had success for so long, a lack of confidence is inevitable. I could see some situations that could be developed, but then when you are in that situation, you understand it better." What happened in January wasn't straightforward. 4 players left the club and they were important ones. 2 came in, so in numerical terms, instead of strengthening, on paper the squad was weakened. Conte has been backed with ready-made signings at Juventus, Chelsea and Inter, but says he now knows that will not be the case at Spurs. Bentancur and Kulusevski are ideal prospects for Tottenham because the club is after young players who can improve and develop, rather than players who are the finished article. That's the story here, Conte added. That's the link. That's the club's vision and philosophy. It's inevitable that if you want to improve faster and want to be competitive faster, you need more experienced players because they boost the experience levels among the team. As I've said, I understood that was the club's vision here.